All right, guys, new for 2025 is the Aventon Pace 4. That's right, they've dropped the number 500 from the name, but they've also dropped some of the components we're used to seeing on here. You may notice it already. If not, we'll talk about what's been dropped, we'll talk about what's been added, and we'll do a full run through of the Aventon ACU suite of security and tech features that's going to come standard on the new Aventon Pace 4. All right, guys, so the new Pace 4, like I said in the intro, they've dropped the 500 from the name. We're just going with Pace 4. Now, it is a Class 2 cruiser e-bike, but of course, you can unlock it to Class 3 speeds very easily in the app with just a few buttons. Now, this is priced at $17.99, and it is UL 2271 and certified to UL 2849 standards. And when it comes to weight, they say this weighs 53 pounds, but of course, I did my own testing, and it turns out it does weigh 53 pounds when there's no battery in it. That battery weighs just under 9 pounds. So the bike itself is around 61.5 pounds when it's all said and done and ready to ride. Now, in terms of framing, we did have a couple changes here. So the new frame we have here, the front half is made using a gravity cast process and some internal honeycombing for some structural interior support. And ultimately, the whole new frame feels stiffer, more rigid, and just basically more responsive to your kind of direction as you ride the bike. It's a little bit snappier, a little bit more fun, and I think that was a good move on their part. And anytime you have a step-through frame, when you can make it more rigid because you lack that top crossbar, it's always going to be a good thing. Now, speaking of that top crossbar, new for 2025 with the Pace 4, we no longer have a high-step version. So this is the only version of frame you can get, which is the step-through frame. Now, it comes in 3 colors. There is a mica color, kind of an earthy gray, and a flint color. It's kind of almost a black, very, very dark gray color. And then this is the blue steel. It's a really cool matte metallic blue with some white and dark blue accents. And those are the 3 colors available. Now, in terms of the frame redesign, like we talked about, it got gravity casting, which did make it more rigid, but they also extended that top tube up front by just a couple inches, kind of bringing that front end up just a hair. And when it comes to sizing on this, it's going to be in 2 sizes. So there's a small medium and then a large extra large like I have here. Now, this large extra large fits riders from 5'7" up to 6'1". I'm 5'11", kind of on the higher end of that, and I thought it fit me really well. With definitely still have room in the seat post. So there's room for anybody who is 6'1". That's always nice to be able to say that it does fit the full range, and I think it does in this case. Now, the small medium fits riders from 4'11" up to 5'7", so really anywhere from that 4'11" up to 6'1" mark, Aventon has you covered. Now, some geo numbers for this frame are: the wheelbase from front hub to rear hub is going to be 43.7 inches. Our standover height is about 16.9 inches. Our reach up top is going to be about 17.5 inches, but of course that will change if you loosen the stem bolts and kind of adjust that handlebar based on what fit is comfortable for you, your arm length, and what's just generally comfortable. That would dial or change that fit, just that reach just a little bit. But the way it sits right now, it's about 17.5 inches. Now, in terms of max payload, this is set at 300 pounds. And when it comes to tires and wheels, we have a 27.5 by 2.1 inch Innova tire on the alloy 27.5 inch wheel, 36 holes. And these tires have ran really nice. So it's a nice slick commuter tread, but there is some mild tread on here and some seeping for like wet pavement. So you still have traction in wet conditions. So the tires roll very smooth, very quiet. I really like the tires a lot. And they have a nice reflective sidewall strip that just gives you some increased visibility if you're out riding at night. Now, when it comes to things like fenders and racks and accessories, it's a bit different. So right now there's going to be no fenders and no rear rack because this is a cruiser bike. Some of their other bikes, like the Level 3, for example, a more beefed up version of this, that one does have fenders and racks. But this one is going to be more a stripped down, almost like a Level light version in my opinion. And the good news is, if you really are set on having a rear rack and fenders, all the mounting points are in place for you to simply grab them from Aventon and put them on the bike if you want them. They're not just going to ship them to you though on this specific model. Now, when it comes to your own gear or your own things, like I said, we do have mounting points for fenders and racks, but you also have 2 bosses right here on the down tube to mount like a water bottle cage. You also have another set on the front fork arms on both sides. So you have quite a few options to rig this out for however you're looking to do so. Just depends on what you have in mind. But the Pace 4 here is ready to accommodate. Now when it comes to lighting, we do have front and rear lighting and a headlight and tail light built into these chainstays, but they also act as a brake light and they act as turn signals, which you can actuate through the display up above. All right, when it comes to the powertrain on the new Pace 4, we've still got a 500 watt rear hub motor here. This one now is rated nominally at 500 watts, but it peaks it up to 864 and it puts out 60 Newton meters of torque. Now you've got 3 riding modes, Eco, Sport, and Turbo, each getting progressively more powerful as you move up in pedal assist. And the motor is activated with a torque sensor. Now Aventon's torque sensors, I've mentioned it in previous reviews lately, their torque sensors in this last year have gotten really nice and smooth, and this one is no exception. Very smooth, very natural feeling, and they just keep getting better and better, so kudos on their torque sensor. Now, one really cool thing about this bike is in the app, and I'll show you how you do it later. You just know that you can go into the app and custom tune the motor, each level of pedal assist to kind of have the power and torque settings that you prefer when you ride. So if you don't like the way it comes factory, you can always set your own custom motor tuning profile and just ride it that way. A really nice feature for a lot of you guys who like to tinker with your settings. Now, in terms of the battery, we have a now 36 volt system. Now this system is part of Aventon's new shared battery and motor systems, like the Level Point 3 coming with the same 36 volt system and 500 watt motor. This one does as well. Now this does a couple good things for you, the consumer. The brand is going to spend less money developing a new battery and style and engineering to fit every new bike, and instead they have one battery and one motor for several bikes. Ultimately that makes getting parts easier, securing spare batteries gets simpler, and I would think over time probably more affordable because they're not working through so many different product numbers. But with that said, this new 36 volt battery has a 20 amp hours to it, giving us 720 watt hours. Now previously, and on most e-bikes, you get a set of keys to lock this in. This one does not come with keys, but simply using the Aventon app, you can drop the battery right from the app by hitting the battery release button, which I'll do now. And that unlocks the battery. You'll still have one safety latch that you can depress. And now that safety latch also works as a hook where you could hang this or carry it, but when you're not using it, you can just fold it back down and that will help you remove it and reinsert it into the frame. Now, like I said, this is UL 2271 certified. Now they say in terms of range, you can get up to 70 miles, which is 10 miles more than the last version of the Pace at 60. And when I did my range test with the minimum assistance activated in Eco mode, which by the way is plenty of power, and I was able to cruise over 12 miles an hour. That got me 71 miles on a single charge. I did it again on max assistance, so up at 20 miles an hour the whole time. And that one I still got 44 miles. So really nice range numbers out of this new 36 volt system, and plenty of power. That 60 Newton meters, it handles hills well. I'll show you on our rides here. I do a couple sustained climbs, a couple short punchy climbs, and the bike just handles it really well. You do lose a couple miles an hour, but all in all, it can handle it no problem. So to put this back, you're gonna just do the opposite way you did. So I'll put the bottom in first, and that allows me to snap it into place up top. All right, when it comes to the components, I'm gonna start with the basics, the drivetrain, the brakes, and then I'll chat real quick about the ACU, and then we'll get more into depth detail about how that ACU works when we get into the app and display section. So first things first, we have an 8-speed Shimano Altus drivetrain mated to a 12 to 32 rear Shimano HG cassette and a 48 tooth chainring that's in a 3-piece crankset here. Now the arms are going to be 170 millimeter cranks mated to composite flat plastic pedals or composite flat pedals with some traction studs and some reflectors for visibility. Now when it comes to the braking, we have Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. These are Tektros with 2 piston calipers and 180 millimeter rotors, both front and back. Generally speaking, these brakes perform really well on most any bike under, I'd say, 80 pounds, and this bike being between 50 and 60 pounds, depending on how you measure it. This is a really light bike for these brakes, and the brakes perform really well. No surprises there. And Tektro is a really well-known brand that your local bike shops are familiar with, and getting parts for or servicing is super easy. Now, when it comes to the Aventon ACU, or the Aventon Control Unit, which is what that stands for, that's located right here behind the chainring. I'll put a picture up on the screen if you can't see it, but it's a small box that contains like a chipset and some of the hardware that manages and acts as the brains for the security tech suite of features, things like geo-fencing and unusual activity alarms, GPS tracking, stuff like that. We'll get into that in just a moment when we do the app and display, but the kind of hardware HQ is right here above the bottom or behind the bottom bracket and just behind the seat tube. Now, the seat up here is Aventon's padded seat. This one has nice spring supports and a nice wide sit bone, like sit pattern here. And it's on this new suspension seat post you can push down. And when you remove it, you'll see that it's got a preload adjustment. So based on your weight, someone who's 180 pounds might need a very different setting from someone who's, 250 pounds. And this is where you can make that adjustment. That way, no matter what your rider weight is, you can get the right amount of suspension sit here in your seat post. So to put that back, it's a simple quick release and you pop that back on. Now up front, no suspension fork. It is a fully rigid frame aside from the suspension seat post. And we have our 720 millimeter wide alloy BMX bar. So that was one of the things they changed as well on the new Pace. So previously we had a more Dutch cruiser style bar, sitting more upright, more relaxed. This one is still upright and relaxed, but it's not quite as far swept back as the previous version. I've found that loosening these stem bolts up here and just kind of angling it back the way it is, it helps a lot. But if you're really die hard about having a Dutch cruiser bar, or you love the previous Paces and you wish they wouldn't have gone away from it, if this is the case, I would say give this a try first. And if it doesn't cut it for you, you can pick up a Dutch cruiser bar on Amazon for less than 30 bucks and pop it on there. But nonetheless, this new BMX bar, I think it's kind of fun. It makes the bike a little bit more playful. The cable management up front is handled with these tie wraps that handle both sides and then route into the frame. Inside the handlebars here, we have lock-on Aventon grips on both ends with some platform rubber palm rest, Tektro brake levers on both sides, your Shimano index shifter, trigger shifters under the bar, and on this side we have a push throttle and the new Aventon display. And in the center we have a fixed stem that's 50 millimeters with a 4-bolt 31.8 millimeter bite, pretty typical of a handlebar. Now let's take a closer look at the Aventon display and the app, and we'll talk about the security features as well. All right guys, so this is the home screen on the new BC147 display. So aside from this being small and minimalistic, Aventon says they kind of just drew on inspiration from the old MP3 players of the past, and I think it is a cool looking design. Now I will say the font is pretty small, so if you have trouble reading the smaller font, I tend to use my cell phone as a second screen because it will mirror and display all the same info your display has. But sticking with the display itself, so right on the top right, we have our battery indicator and percentage and a battery bar. In the center, we have the Aventon app logo paired as well as the GPS indicator. On the top left, we have the current time, and right now it's a military time. This bar going horizontally above the speedometer is going to be your real-time power wattage output. As you use more, you'll see that bar kind of fluctuate. Down below that is speed, which you can put in kilometers per hour if you want to. And on the right-hand side is the riding mode. So as we go up, you'll see that change to Eco, Sport, and Turbo, and back down to off. Now, if you want to cycle through some other data screens, you can hit the power button, see the trip meter, trip time, average speed and max speed up to 35 miles an hour, and odometer at 133 and total time 856. And back to the home screen. Now, if you want to get into some advanced menus, well, before we do that, holding the plus button will turn on the headlight and likely dim the backlit screen, which it did. To turn it off, that'll brighten it back up. And to hold the minus button, that activates walk mode, which will move the bike with you at a very slow speed so you don't have to carry it or push it or drag it behind you. Now, if you want to go to advanced settings and play with some settings, you can hold the plus and minus buttons, and that will give you some options. So the first one is to clear the trip meter. This is where you can drop the battery. Just hit the battery lock. I'm not going to do it because it'll turn off the bike. This is your bike lock, which I hit that, and that will lock the bike in place using that aluminum billet rod and wheel it has mounted on the back tire. That physically locks the tire in place and it can't be moved, which is really nice and a lot harder to manipulate than, say, a bike lock would be. The display unit brightness you can change. And change the units of measurements from speedometer, from mile an hour to kilometers per hour. In the auto power off setting, you can change how long the bike powers, how long it takes to power down before you walk away. Here you can set up a startup password for the bike so no one could ride it without knowing the password. Here you can get your system info like the name, serial number, HMI versions, things like that. You can set the date and time right here, and then here you can connect to the app. When you select this, it'll give you a QR code that will pair on the Aventon app and take you to the home screen of the app. But now we'll take a look at that app and kind of show you how that works. All right, so this is the home screen on your Aventon app once you pair the bike. Now, I'll just kind of run through top to bottom, and then we'll go on the tabs on the bottom left to right. So starting up here at the top, this is just going to tell you you can sync your cycling data with your health app on your phone. I'm going to close that out because I'm not going to sync it on my personal device. Here you can turn the bike on or off. You can lock and unlock it, so that wheel lock activation you can manage right through here. And you can turn off and on your lights. Now, if you want to go to more settings, that will take you into some more advanced settings of the bike. Some of them we saw on the display, but others are specific to the app and they manage the bike. So this would be screen brightness up top. The power off timer you can set as high as 99 minutes, or you can turn it off altogether right there. Assistance level is currently off, but if I did change it to eco in the app, it will change on the display as well. If you go into ride tune, this is where you can specifically tune each level of pedal assist between eco, tour, and sport. And you can see, so I'll just go to sport, middle of the road. That one is set at 40 Newton meters with 60% assistance and 60% pedal response. But I could bump everything up to 100 if I wanted to, or I could bring everything down to 20 if I wanted to. You can do that at each level just based on just how you like to ride and what you want out of your bike, which is a really nice feature for you guys. So to back out of that, I'm just going to factory reset that because I don't want to try and remember where it was. Down below that, you have an alarm for the bike that you can turn off, but if you leave it on when it's set and the bike is locked, unusual activity will trigger an alarm that will sound and send you a notification to your phone. This you can activate to lock the bike when it's powered off automatically. That will again activate that rear wheel lock. This next one is the security verification. I have not used this, but it explains right here what it does. It'll essentially send a beacon from the Aventon servers to your bike, and if it loses that beacon, it will lock the bike and power it down. It's another just extra layer of security. Now you can have that off or on. That's currently off. Here you can go to unusual activity detection. This is kind of a sensitivity setting that if the bike is manipulated while you're away, it will sound an alarm and notify you on your phone. And you can change how sensitive it is here with this little slider bar. Now here you can clear the bike's password and set a new one. Here you can go into geo-fencing. Geo-fencing is a really cool feature where you can basically take 4 different areas. It's only showing 1, but you can create 4. We'll just create 1 right now. We're at a local park. Let's say I work here and I don't want my bike to leave my work area while I'm at work. I can just basically pick one of these pre-made shapes, or I can stretch it out myself and kind of make a custom shape based on my property size or where I'm at. But once you create your geo fence, which is that invisible fence line, if the bike was to be moved outside of it without you being paired to the bike and you being on the bike, it would automatically power down the bike and notify you that the bike left the designated area. And again, you can set 4 of these. So you could do one for home, one for work, maybe where your kid's school is at. It's a really cool feature as well. So I'm gonna discard and quit because I'm not gonna set those up for now because this is not my personal bike. And then down here, you can update the firmware. I love these features because this allows you to update the controller, the battery management system, the display, and the ECU without ever needing to take it into a service center, without ever needing to plug it in. It'll just simply do it through the app and it'll automatically load it onto the bike. So that means as they make improvements or bug fixes, they can just shoot these directly to your bike without you needing to do anything, but just turn on your bike and update it. So we'll back out of here. We have the backup and restore. Here you can back up and restore all the data about your bike. Here's the IoT service features where you can, this is where you would agree to the 4G data connectivity. If you agree to it, you get a 12-month period for free. So your first year is free for that data connection, for the bike to have its own cellular data signal to towers, regardless of whether your phone's paired to it or not. And that also allows you to track it with GPS and anywhere else, regardless of whether you're paired to the phone or even near the bike. Having that internal 4G connectivity is a nice feature. Now, if you wanted to use it beyond that first year, it would cost a flat fee of $20 per year. So, you know, less than $2 a month, which is pretty reasonable, but you don't have to. So you're not locked into this if you don't want to use it after the first year. Transport mode is just a specific setting you can set if you're getting the bike like officially transported, tied down in a truck or something like that. And then here you can get your about information, serial numbers, firmware numbers for all of your major components. And then the last setting on there was to unpair. And if I did that, that would unpair the app from my bike and allow someone else to pair to the bike. So we'll back out of this. Here is the battery settings. You can get the state of charge. You can get charge cycles it has, voltage, current, and your current remaining. And then here you can drop the battery by hitting that button. Here you can go into your local map and you can see where you're at. You can back out of this. You can go and get your display data here, things like your max speed, average speed, calories, and CO2 reductions. Right here, you can access the Aventon dealer network based on your location. So I'm going to say no for location just because I wanted to show you basically almost anywhere in the US besides like one little strip there. It looks like it's pretty much covered with a lot of dealer networks to either purchase bikes or get them serviced, which is a really nice feature. So if you have an issue, you can just pull up the local dealer near you, take it there, and start getting things diagnosed. Here you can get diagnostics about your bike, which may be nice if you have to call support or deal with anything going on with the bike and you're not sure what to do. They may have you grab the diagnostics. And then here you can actually contact support from the app. We'll go to the second tab down below. This is where you can record your rides. If you record your rides through the app, they'll all be stored here and you can look at them through daily, monthly, yearly, or all-time metrics. Down here, the go button is going to activate the ride GPS tracking. This is going to literally act as your ride GPS tracker. You can change between night mode and day mode and record your rides. And you can even share them on Aventon's kind of social media page, which I'll show you next. But this is the area where you could ride your bike, record it, and even use the app as like kind of a little display right there on your screen that's a little bit larger than the display on the bike itself. Now to get out of this, I'm going to just back out because we didn't really go anywhere. So here is Discover. This is that kind of like social media or networking side to the Aventon app. It's actually used every day by people all over the country. I'm always surprised by that. Every day people share their rides from all over the place. Maybe somebody in your local area, maybe not at all, but it's just cool to see other owners out there having fun on their Aventons. And if you want to share yours, you can certainly do so right here from the app. Now the last one here is going to be your profile, which just has your username, whatever medals or achievements you've unlocked by riding the bike more and more often. You can also get to your connected apps like Strava or your Apple Health, and that will send your ride tracking data to those as well. And then your dealer network, change your password, pair the phone, clear the cache. These settings take you back to language and delete account, and then just your simple about for the version of the app. And that really makes up the app. It's been a really good app to use. I've never had any real problems with it. And out of all the bike company apps, when I think of, Aventon comes to mind as one of the better apps out there. And it works really well with the ACU and all the security features. So that wraps up the Aventon app. All right, guys, we're out here on the new Pace 4. We're out on just a local bike path. We're gonna take it along, kind of see the speeds of the motor, how the brakes work, talk about how everything feels, and then we'll hit a couple of hills along the way just to see how the 500 watt motor does with its 60 Newton meters of torque on this class 2 bike, even with some hills. So first things first, when you get on this bike, the biggest change that they have done is certainly the move from Dutch style cruiser bars that kind of had you more upright and sitting on your sit bones to this BMX bar that brings you just forward just a hair. You're still upright, but there is a little leaning into the grips that you didn't have as much previously. So that's probably the biggest change. It's still very, very comfortable. And with the suspension seat post, I mean, really, it's very comfortable. So comfort's not a factor. It's just a change in the way the bike feels that you should definitely be aware of if you were used to how the old Pace versions were. So let's talk about the motor. 500 watt motor, 60 Newton meters of torque, and it peaks at 864 watts. And then this motor and battery is the same motor and battery used in the new level 3. So it should be very easy to find replaceable parts and spare batteries and things like that over the long term, which I think is a really cool idea for the brand to go to. So let's see how it does going from 0 to 20 just on throttle. So we'll bump it up to turbo. All right, 3, 2, 1. So a nice reserve start. Easy to get going. We're already up over 10, 13, 15, 17, 19, and 20. So no problem reaching class 2 speeds, which is what this bike is, a class 2 e-bike. And if you also notice, the motor's very quiet on here. Aventon's motors have been getting quieter and quieter just like that level they came out with. Again, they're using the same motor and battery, so I guess I should expect that, but it's always a nice pleasant surprise when you have a quiet motor on an e-bike. So let's check out, we have a little hill up ahead, and that hill has a 9% kind of a punchy uphill, but it's not very long. And then right after that, we'll turn into this neighborhood, and that one's got more of about a 5 to 7% sustained climb, but it's a lot longer, around a quarter mile. And it always gives me a good idea of how the throttle and motor perform, how much speed we lose going up those. So let's just keep that throttle pegged on 20 miles an hour. And then we'll hold that going up the hill up ahead. And we'll talk about how much speed we lose and what it kind of felt like. Another big factor here is the torque sensor. This torque sensor, just like the level they announced or they released, really smooth. Everything's quiet, feels very natural. The torque sensors are really getting up there. Just in the premium feel, they feel really nice, and they've come a long way just in a couple of years from a lot of the brands. Obviously, Aventon is included in that with this one. All right, so here is the first little 9%er. So I'm going to just hold 20 miles an hour. So it says we're holding 20.2. Even though this says 19, that says 20.2. All right, so here we go. So we're slowing down to about 17. I saw 16.8. So about 3.5 miles an hour there. And that's on a more steep 9%. Let's go around the corner here to the neighborhood where they have that 5 to 7% grade and see how it does on more of a just realistic daily uphill you might be heading up. All right, so a quick little stop here, and then when I take this left, we'll be on that hill. You can go. All right, so. All right, so I'm only using throttle. We're accelerating up the hill, which is a good sign. It's not unable to do it or not just maintaining a speed. It's actually accelerating up. So we've already reached our 20 miles an hour. We still have a ways to go on this. It'll get a little bit steeper as we go. We'll see what changes. But as of now, 19.6 over here. I saw it drop to, but it keeps pushing right back up to 20.2. And it's at 20.2. Still holding that. So that dropped again to like 19.1, I think, and then back up to 20.2. And that was more of like a transition in the concrete. I think it was just kind of a bump. This is the steepest part right here, and it looks like we're about 19.9, 19.8, and then bumps back up, 19.9, 19.7, 19.8, and it just hovers right there. It doesn't ever go below 19.6, it looks like. So it holds its speed really well on this climb. So for those of you wondering about how it does on hills, that's with no pedaling, just the motor and battery itself, which is a pretty good indicator of what you can expect. So the brakes on here are the Tektro hydraulic disc brakes with 2 piston calipers and 180 millimeter rotors. They've been performing really well for me, no issues there. And I kind of expected that. This Tektro setup, the 2 piston calipers and 180 millimeter rotors, it's just kind of a workhorse for the industry. It's on most e-bikes at this point. Not all, but most. And they generally, unless the bike is super heavy, like north of 80 pounds, they always do a really good job. And this is no exception. So we're going 20 now. I'm just gonna say at the count of 3, we'll just stop and see how they do. 3, 2, 1. And so that was from 22 miles an hour. It stopped pretty quick there. I can hear a little bit of just rubbing sound between the rotors and the caliper pads, but I think it's just the air vents circling through the pads. All in all, the bike rolls really smooth. These tires, the 2.1, so you got a 27.5 inch diameter of the wheel, and then the tire is sized at, well, 27.5 and a 2.1 inches wide, with a nice commuter tire that has a reflective sidewall for visibility, but beyond that has nice commuter tread that rolls fast, but still has good like seeping lines for wet pavement and things like that. You can still ride this on a wet day and not worry about, you know, within reason, not losing a ton of traction on the road. I think this is going to be a really good just get around town bike. They call it a cruiser. It's certainly good for cruising with these fast tires and the quiet motor and the comfy suspension seat post. It really is just a good, fun cruising bike. Now this one doesn't come with, you know, fenders and racks and things like that, but it's equipped to carry them. So you've got mounting points on the fork arms, you've got mounting points for fenders, you've got mounting points for racks, you've got mounting points for bottle cages. So it's certainly equipped to handle whatever you want, but the way it comes is just a straight up cruiser, open wheels, open rear rack or no rear rack, and yeah, just get on your bike, start cruising. I think this would be like a good college round town bike, or just a weekend have fun bike. You don't need it to be any performance machine. You're not looking for any kind of off-road adventuring. You just want something you can ride on your local trails like this, get around town, go to school, go to work. That's where these bikes really shine. But let's head back and look at it from a mechanics and build perspective. We'll kind of talk about things that just to be aware of as the owner of the bike. And then we will round out this review and finish off. All right, guys, so I'm going to remove my reviewer hat for a second. We're going to talk about the Pace 4 from more of an ownership standpoint, things you're going to encounter with maintenance or just issues with the build, some things I like, some things I'd like to see improved, just those types of things. Now, before I jump into it, I want to say thank you to Feedback Sports. They've given us a couple of their Pro HD racks. These are lightweight, they fold up small, they're easy to move around, but they're really durable and stable. Even for the bigger trikes, things pushing 100 pounds, these stands just do a really good job. A lot of power and stability in a really small and light bike package. Now, if you like to tinker with your bikes and you want to check out some of their stands or their tools, I'll put a link down in the description for you guys to check that out. Now, with that said, let me just start with what I like about the Pace. So kicking things off up front, they did not go with a quick release front end, and I think that's a solid choice on a bike like this. Having a bolted front axle is going to just be a more secure, more stable connection point for the bike over a quick release. Now, going back here to the wheel lock on here, this is part of the ACU or Aventon's control unit. This is basically, it looks like an aluminum rounded billeted locking wheel that inserts through one device. It inserts a rod in there and that immobilizes the rear wheel. It's a really simple system. All the components to it, if something was to fail, are accessible from the outside. You don't need any special tools or mechanics. You could undo this, probably put in a new replacement piece if you needed to. It's just easy to access, but it's a really good theft deterrent option, much more so than just giving a bike a lock or incorporating one of those big, ugly, like U-bolt clamps that come with the bike and mount to the frame. This is a nice out of view thing that just does a really good job, and based on how they built it up and how they applied it to the bike's frame, it's just easy to get to in the event that it failed or you needed to replace it, which is a solid thing. I like cool tech, but if it's too hard to access or replace, it's almost too much of a pain. And in this case, they kept it accessible, easy to get to, and easy to replace if you had to. So that was a solid move there as well. And then I liked, the last thing on here I wanted to point out was a suspension seat post. Now that doesn't seem like a big deal at first glance, but there's a couple reasons why I like that. So this is a simple rigid bike. So we've got no front suspension fork, we've got no rear suspension. It's just set up to easily cruise around. But with no suspension, you get a little bit more bumps in the road, you get a less comfortable ride. So what they did is they threw in a suspension seat post that has suspension piston travel here in the seat that will go up and down so the bike can absorb all those bumps and you don't feel them reverberating up through your body. Now, the reason why I like it from an owner standpoint and a maintenance standpoint is because a suspension seat post is a simple item you just toss into the bike through a quick release lever. You could pop in a new seat post if you wanted to. It's almost no maintenance whatsoever, versus a front suspension fork, which is going to add weight and size up here, as well as the need to service a suspension fork over time. It's just a simpler solution to give you a smoother ride in a really quick and easy package. And I think it was just a good choice for a bike like this. Now I'm going to jump into some things that I would like to see improved over the next go around. And I'm going to start it with something I would originally or plan to call a pro and point out as a good thing, and that is this chain slap guard. It's pretty beefy, it's got some substantial size to it, and over time, as this chain guard slaps around when you go over a curb or a pothole or just bumps in the road, this prevents that chain from marring up the chain stays, the metal eating through the paint, ultimately just damaging the bike. These are a good thing to have. Now, the reason why I pulled it up as a negative is because on this one, the only way it's held on is it looks like through some adhesive, and that's already coming off on here. So I live in a dusty, dry desert climate, and if I take this bike out every single day in its current state, I can almost guarantee myself within a week or two, this is just going to find itself a new home on the side of the path, and I probably won't even realize it because it'll just eventually fall off. So if you get this bike, I would just say when you get it, make sure it's nice and secure, and every week or so, I would just probably give it a check with my finger, and if it does start to come up like this, find a good all-purpose bonding agent to keep that fully secured down. Hopefully in future models, this is just better secured and it's not really an issue, but something to be aware of if you do own it. And then the last thing is up front here. So the way the bike is set up, we've got two separate cable ties that wrap from the controls going down into the frame. Now that's a good thing because the more you can consolidate these wires and send them into the frame, they're out of sight, out of mind, and it looks nice. So no complaints about how they did it, just some small tweaks to the execution. So right here in the front, we have this headlight that has an adjustable beam to it. That's also good. But the way this is set up, when I turn this handlebar, you can see that clicks over the headlight. Now at first glance, that's no big deal. But what happens when I start turning back the other way? Well, now I'm pulling on here and I'm feeling a lot of tension. And if I force that, I'm going to damage something or potentially pull a cable out or line somewhere. So I have to always make sure that that is back on this side of it. To permanently do that, I'd probably have to add some sort of like connection here or zip tie or something to keep that from coming over, or I don't know. I'd have to find a good solution for this just to keep it from happening. But if you do a sharp turn and you're not paying attention, or you're moving the bike and then you crank it back the other way, it makes me nervous. So something I would point out to the company, maybe find a way that the headlight doesn't interfere with those cables. And if you own it, it's something you'd probably just figure out pretty quickly and be fine with. But if you're not used to the bike yet, or you just got it, or you're thinking about it, it's one of those things that I would say, just keep an eye out for and make sure it doesn't get snagged, because if you do rip it the opposite direction, you potentially could pull a little too hard on something that's something you need, and I wouldn't recommend that to anybody, obviously. So with that said, everything else on the bike is pretty straightforward. Everything from the headset is a compression bearing setup. We've got a stubby standard stem with a 31.8 millimeter bite, hydraulic disc brakes, quick release adjustments on the seats. These are all parts you can find at a local bike shop and just pick up yourself. They're basically parts that any bike mechanic would know how to work on and use, which is a really good thing. As these e-bikes get more and more mainstream, the parts are getting more and more mainstream, which just makes your local bike shop easier to help you out, which is always a good thing. All in all, that wraps it up. I enjoy this bike, it's pretty smooth, and those were the few things I had to talk about. All right, guys, so there you have it, the new Pace 4 from Aventon, all new for 2025. They did a lot of nice new things. We've swapped out the Dutch cruiser bar for more of a BMX style bar. We've elongated the frame just a hair and stiffened it up with some honeycomb and gravity cast framing. And then the motor back here with the 36-volt system gave us over 70 miles of range, and you can custom tune the rear hub motor to your liking. Now, if you have any questions about the Pace 4, drop them down below and I'll personally find out and reply and get you that information. And if you haven't done so already, consider liking and subscribing. And until the next review, I'll see you guys out on the trail.